Looking at President Biden to potentially deplete our strategic petroleum reserves even more just ahead of the midterms. It's as if he just wants to give it all away, everything that you worked so hard for. At best, in its attempt, as we're supposed to believe, just to lower the price at the pump, but really it's more like a naked political play to buy your vote. The pending announcement from the Biden administration is just the latest tranche, but it's also part of this 180 million barrels that the White House started to draw down back in May. It is the largest release ever from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Now, this is supposed to be used for catastrophic disruptions in oil productions, the ones not caused by the Biden administration's energy policies, which have forced American oil producers to cut back on what they were pumping. We've seen big releases before, like after Hurricane Katrina, but Hurricane Ian isn't the reason Joe Biden is doing this, because oil production and distribution was not seriously affected by that storm. Another legit reason for drawing down the SPR is war, like the one China is about to start if they invade Taiwan. But yet here we are with our reserves sitting at the lowest point since 1985, looking at a potential world war. Now, average gas prices are hovering around $4 a gallon. That's according to AAA. You heard James Rosen report that. They are up again, as he said, 20 cents from a month ago and 56 cents higher than they were this time last year. The record high was $5 back in June, but AAA actually says they expect the price to decrease even without the release of our strategic petroleum reserves. That's because of an economic slowdown, what we all used to call a recession before the Biden administration changed the meaning to fit their narrative. So there's little evidence to show that this latest release is necessary, except for the attempts that the Biden administration is making to dull their losses during the midterms. Now, aside from the oil issue, which American taxpayers have purchased for a rainy day, the Biden administration also has no problem giving away your tax dollars so they can claim they are paying off other people's student loan debt.
Their outrage is wrong and it's hypocritical. I will never apologize for helping working Americans and middle-class people as they recover from the pandemic.
Now, that was President Biden with the audacity to criticize and lecture Republicans for calling out this as a bad deal. We already know the truth. Republicans do, and so does every other American. This, too, is just politics, because it's not really good for anyone except Democratic donors and the liberal members of Congress who still have massive amounts of student loan debt. They can really be the only explanation for this. Now, because we know that student loan forgiveness disproportionately benefits wealthier Americans, we also know that President Biden doesn't have the legal authority to cancel student loans, but they're doing it anyway. Lastly, canceling student loans will most likely increase inflation. But hey, they are counting on no one noticing that until after September the 8th. Joining us now is co-host of Spicer & Company, Sean Spicer. Sean, great to see you. I was fired up about this. I know you're fired up about something else. If you want to say something about this release and the naked political, I hate to be so cynical, but there's no other explanation for it, and it's not going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you point out, this is normally done after a natural disaster or a world war or some reason where we try to preserve this. Biden's going off. He's going to be meeting with or at a place where you've got the Saudis, and he's announcing he won't even talk to them. So after begging them to try to hold off until after the November elections before they reined in the production of oil, and the Saudis rebuffed him, they're now saying, I won't even talk to you. This is making a problem of their own making. They stopped domestic energy production day one in their office. Then they refused to engage with the Saudis. They've been begging the Venezuelans and everyone else around the world who's a bad actor to produce more oil. And now what they're doing is they're depleting our oil just to save a few cents, selling it on the world market where places like China are buying it, just to score some points ahead of a midterm election where they're going to get clobbered.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense other than this is pretty on brand for the administration, just a big middle finger to working class Americans and then telling working class Americans, how dare you? We're doing this for you. They know the truth. Let's also talk about.
And by the way, you're going to have to buy it back at a much higher rate. President Trump filled that strategic petroleum reserve at a very low rate when gas was selling at $10, $20 a barrel. Now they're going to have to buy it back at $80 a barrel. This is costing Americans in so many different ways.
Right. Back then, Chuck Schumer called it a $3 billion bailout for big oil. It's going to be like $5 billion next time around, so he can like that. Let's also talk about Republicans making some problems for themselves as well, and we wanted to talk to you about a couple interviews and profiles that we saw. Firstly, Kevin McCarthy sitting down with Punchbowl News. I know a lot of our audience has probably never heard of Punchbowl News. This is like a you know, kind of like an industry rag for lobbyists, as you say, in Washington, D.C. But it's Jake Sherman. He used to be with Politico. They now have Punchbowl News. And Kevin McCarthy says, I'll win no matter what. But why is the future Speaker of the House wasting his time with Punchbowl News when, as you point out, this isn't going to be fair coverage?
Yeah, it's a great question, John. I mean, think about it. This is a website of left-wing journalists for inside the Beltway lobbyists, right? That tells you who's up and who's down. But these folks are left-wing people that don't like conservatives. McCarthy gave them unprecedented access for 2 days while he was traveling them. I don't understand what was possibly to gain by doing this. He had a lot to lose and not much to gain. Look, I think that Republicans that think somehow that they're going to endear themselves to left-wing media are nuts. They will tolerate Republicans and conservatives. They will use them, but they will never like you. It is high risk, low reward. I think Republicans have tried this for decades. I get it. They want to get invited to the party. They want to ingratiate themselves. But at the end of the day, there are outlets like Newsmax and so many others in the conservative ecosphere that have grown out there and given them an outlet to speak to the American people. Stop trying to befriend these people who don't like you.
Yeah, it's, you know, for the most part, with most of these outlets, it's either you're the one using them or they are using you. And that's something we strive to avoid here. I know you do as well on your show. The other example, too, we got to talk about is Marjorie Taylor Greene. She did this very long profile with the New York Times author. His name is escaping me. I know you know his name, too, but it's part of a book that he's releasing. Yes, there you go. And so you see the headline. She's obviously posing for the picture here, and it says, "The Problem of Marjorie Taylor Greene." Now, there's a companion piece that came out today in the Times that says the comeback of Marjorie Taylor Greene. But tell us what's really going on here and why you would have advised her not to do this.
Well, look, I mean, it's not a flattering piece. They're talking about how she is an extreme candidate, an extreme member of Congress who has sort of been a thorn in Kevin McCarthy's side, but she is a necessary evil for McCarthy that he's had to deal with and he's had to assuage in the road to the speakership. This does not paint her in a flattering light. Again, this goes back to what I said a moment ago. These Republicans sit back and think that if they sit down with the New York Times, the Washington Post, Politico, Punchbowl News, somehow that they'll be liked. Every single time that this stuff happens, they come out and they look horrible. These reporters want to sit down with them. But this was 2-3 hours of her time. I don't know what she thought she was going to get out of this, except to be mocked and vilified by these reporters on the left, who are then going to go, as this gentleman did, go out and write a book and make a ton of money making her look bad. The right has got to start learning their lesson. Yeah,
and I don't know how many people in North Georgia where Marjorie Taylor Greene's district is read the New York Times or how this is going to affect voters. But again, go out, shoe leather politicking, talk to your constituents, talk to folks like us, get your message out, and don't play this game with the mainstream media and expect a different outcome.
Yeah, John, what do we got coming up? Can I? Real quick, can I just say, I don't think that they should never talk to them. Just so I'm clear on this, if someone's watching and saying, look, we have a First Amendment in this, reporters have a right to ask questions, they should answer. But to be sitting down for 2-3 hour, profiles, to have your picture made with them, to sit down as McCarthy did and give them the Punchbowl News guys 2 days of exclusive access, I don't see what you think you're getting. I get 5 minutes and say, hey, fine, ask me a question or two. I think that we should always engage with these. We have better ideas. We can win them over. But there's not going to get a fair shake. I don't know what you think you're doing by spending 2-3 hours with organizations that literally seek to vilify you.
No, it's an important point and a distinction to what I was saying there. Engage, but make sure you do it in a smart way. Sean Spicer, what do we have coming up at 5 p.m. today with you and Lindsay?
Well, here we are, 21 days out from the midterms. We're going to make sure we're breaking down and giving you an insight into the candidates, the polls, what's happening, who's up, who's down. We're going to talk about a lot of these issues. We're going to be talking about the headwinds that are facing our candidates on both sides of the aisle and where things stand 21 days out. All right. We'll see you at 5 p.m., Sean, and say hello to Lindsay for us and the crew up there in D.C. Thanks so much. Will do. You bet, John.
All right, staying with the economy.